Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about a big announcement I have to make, and that is that the Path of Exile branch for Maxroll has now officially launched. So we all know that Path of Exile is a really complex game. It is also ever-changing, so keeping up with it can be extremely time intensive, and it also requires a lot of knowledge. So before we get into what this website can offer you, I want to go over the team real quick here, the Path of Exile team that we built over the last few months. Number one, me, Trapolar. We've been very involved in Leaguestarter guides, and also trying to get the new player experience as good as possible. This is one of the things we really wanted to do with this website, because that is something that PoE is sorely lacking. We have Chewy here as our team leader. He's basically a D3 player who guided us into making guides. He basically showed us how to do it. We have Tuna, we have Tai Killer. Tuna basically is also helping out with the build guides. He's also writing some of the resource posts. He also made the first Endgame guide. We have Tai Killer, which is doing all our leveling sections. And you have Grimro, which has a currency section where he basically describes the latest meta currency farming methods that he came up with. MB Extreme, he's doing our boss guides. We also have Vodicho, a top D3 player who also showed us a lot about making guides, about how to format it. We have Spicy Sushi, which has a spicy crafting section coming soon. Mr. Firegrass, which doesn't have a picture right now, which helped Grim a lot with his currency guides. With Enki, which helped out with some of the beginner guides. And we have Terence, which helped with the resource posts. So when you see the main website, you can see here that we have the hot topic section, which right now is all the league starters we just released. We have recent YouTube content, which is basically all our content creators who have put out YouTube stuff. You can visit their channel, you can subscribe to them if you want to. There's Impressum down there. And yeah, let's go to the first section. And that is getting started. Now, this one was really important to me that we get this one done, and is basically just for new players who have a rough time getting into the game. We all had that Discord call with a friend of us that we wanted to get into the game, and he just couldn't really get into. We tried for hours, at least that's my experience, and we just couldn't. And this is what we came up with. We have a first step section where we basically talk from everything to choosing your league, to going for your first character, to what are skills, right? It's all in there, basically just talking about the mere basics. And we kind of progress on that in the campaign guide. This is basically like a GPS if you don't know where you're going. And just to show you, this is just incredibly extensive. Every single act is covered here in detail. So yeah, there's been a ton of work in some of these guides. Then we have down here some questions that you might have that maybe might be answered during your first playthrough. For example, here we explain the passive tree. This is actually my article. We basically go through how's the passive tree structured. We go to what is what. Basically just break it down to the simplest denominator. So here we have attributes explained, right? So we have all of these topics covered, all the way to loot filters. Obviously nowadays loot filters are really important, even stash types and also lab. But this is where we have another fall off for a lot of PoE players. This is where you go for the campaign and you have no idea what you're supposed to do, and that is what the Atlas guide is for. So not only do we explain the Atlas right here, so for example, you have this picture here, and we go through everything that is on this picture one by one to give you a complete overview of favorite slots, right? Beacons, void stones and whatnot. And then we also talk about the Atlas progression. This one is by me, and I basically go through how do you roll your maps, what do you do, map basics, tier 1 to 5, 6 to 10. You kind of structure it in a way that people can follow it easily. Also very important here is goals, right? That's something that people want to know. What do you have to unlock? And now that you're on the Atlas, you also have obviously more advanced needs. For example, a advanced loot filter, or learning how to trade for the first time. So I hope this section is going to go well. We put a lot of time into this and a lot of thought, so we will see. Next up, let's talk about the build guides. So there's a lot of websites out there that have a ton of guides, and they just kind of like drown you in them. They update guides even though they're not updated. That is not how we want to approach this. We want to put out a small amount of league starters every league. This league, it's going to be, I think, 6 or 7, but we want them to be on point. So if you want to sort by playstyle, you have this up here. This is obviously something that new players like to do. You can do bossing, you can do mapping, but overall, it's going to be league starter or endgame. Now, when it comes to league starters, I could just show you my I guess my explosive arrow ballista here real quick that I put straight up into here. So this is how this is structured. So we have everything here embedded. If I say explosive arrow, you can hover over it, see what explosive arrow is. We have support gems. We have embeds like this where we show you the strength and weaknesses. We have video embeds where we show you how the skills look. We have ascendancy breakdowns where you can go, okay, the first ascendancy is this, second this, third this, fourth this. We have ascendancy embeds. we have passive tree embeds. So let's go through this a little. We have playstyle section. How does the build actually scale? Offense, defense. We have key build infos where, for example, in EA, I talk about elemental equilibrium. I talk about the mistakes you have to avoid. Then we have a leveling section crafted by Killer himself, which is extremely extensive. If you scroll down here, you can basically see that you can slide this and you can see exactly which gems you need at what level. You also have a leveling passive tree here. I'll just show you the passive tree real quick. This is, for example, the leveling section. So if we go down here, you can actually see that we progress this one. So we can start right here, right? And then you go further. Boom. So now you can see one by one what is happening on the passive tree, what you should spec next. So progressing this, as you can see here, it just goes one by one by one by one. And on the side here, there's also a note section. And for example, if you click on here, it's going to jump right here to Ancestral Bond. It's going to jump right here. So basically, Tai made notes here. So you know when you have to take what note. And I obviously also have the mid-game tree right here. This is basically without a cluster setup, and then the end-game tree. And there's also a ton of notes in here. So to finish up his leveling section, he has a complete act walkthrough where he goes through everything you have to pick, all the gems, all the quest rewards, just absolutely everything. When you're done with that, you have the mapping preparation where we basically talk about what you want to farm with that build. We have a Pantheon embed where you can see all the Pantheons. We have this skill gem embed here. This is basically what you have when you come out of the campaign. Mid-game, once you have your first 6 link, and then end-game with all the good awaken gems. Now in the skill gem section, also all of them are explained in detail why we choose what. Then we once again have the skill tree progression. Right now, cluster jewels do not work on the passive tree. That's still something we have to work on. For now, we have a workaround. I just explained it down here and also in the milestone section that we're going to talk about now. Now, here's the biggest thing down here. This is the character progression. Now, down here, you can see that we have a character embed, and this is basically for early game, for mid game, and for end game. So early game, we start off with like a Stormcloud and maybe a Tabby, right? Some gear with, I don't know, resistances are not on here because obviously it doesn't matter where you have them, but just a little bit of life, right? Nothing really substantial. And once you click over here, you see milestones. Now, this is a system where we basically tell you what would be best to get first, because a lot of the times when you put out a guide, it's very hard to follow in terms of what do I buy first, when do I buy what, how do I allocate my resources, and that is basically something that we wanted to fix here. We have early game milestones. Then once you're finished with those, you go to mid game milestones, you scroll down here, and then you can also go to end game. So once you get to end game, we're talking awakened support gems, we're talking cluster jewel setups, polaric devastation, for example, unnatural instincts, stuff like that. And here at the end, obviously, we also have a video guide if there is one, and there you can also grab the POB, a quick summary, and that's basically a Leaguestarter. Now, when it comes to end game builds, there's also a lot of detail. We currently only have one because those are usually things that get developed over the league, and then we drop it during the league. The league starters should obviously be provided before. Now, we have one right now that Tuna wrote of his Omni Champion because that is still extremely viable. Basically, this is a lot trimmed down because you're supposed to already know the ropes once you're in an endgame build. We don't have a dedicated leveling section, but everything else is still here. But there's more tabs up here, as you can see. New builds currently empty. This is basically whenever we put out more of experimental builds where we just have these build diaries. We don't know if the build's going to function, right? We just throw it out and update you every day. We have Twink leveling, which Firegrass is writing right now with Tai. We just released the first one. There's going to be one for every class. And then we have the archive section. This is basically when builds just aren't really good anymore. Now, for example, skeleton mages could still be good, but we just don't know. So we don't want to bait anybody into builds that might not actually get them for the league. So we're going to be very, very careful with that. We're not going to just recycle our builds. If something is not viable, it's going to be in here. I think an archive section is also really nice. For example, I like older builds. Sometimes you still get some inspiration from it to make something new out of it. So I think having this in here kind of makes sense. So that's getting started, build guides. We also have the bosses section, which basically MBX wrote. Yeah, not all of them are released right now, but the most important ones right now are. Let's, for example, open his Maven boss guide. Right here, we can basically see he talks about what is Maven, what's the loot table, all of the skills that Maven has. So if you want to learn the boss fight, this is the perfect perfect thing for you. Every single mechanic is explained here. Every phase is explained. So if you ever had that urge to understand how these bosses actually work, what their attacks actually do, this is going to be your section. Our next one is big. We have Grimroll on our team, and that's obviously a huge boon to everybody who's on softcore trade, because Grim is always on the pulse of time. He already even released a Lake of Kalandra guide that you should probably check out. He does a ton of guides, also new player focused like Chaos Recipe, a bulk selling guide. We have Endless Heist, up to like endgame Eldritch farming. So if we click on the guide right here, for example, Eldritch Altar farming, once you're in here, you will see how hard is it, what's the investment, profitability, management, and then he goes in depth about the gameplay, what kind of build is required, some tips and tricks, right? An Atlas passive tree to accommodate that strategy, all the way up to the map choice, the Atlas state, just everything you can imagine, and even at the end, how you sell the loot that you just farmed. Now then we have a resource section over here where there's a lot of stuff that is already in the getting started section, but it's also a little bit expanded, as well as that we have like important resources like PoE Trade, Awaken PoE Trade, so you can also check out those. And there's also a lot of stuff gray still, as you can see here. These are basically more nerdy articles about damage multipliers, defense mechanics, how you can min-max them. These are going to be released over the next few leagues, basically something we're working on right now. And yeah, you can also see that the crafting section here is still open. We just got Spicy Sushi on board. He's going to make us something really special here. It's probably going to be out for 3.20. Now, there's an official post of the Maxroll website, and basically one topic I want to cover in this video is RMT. There is a certain problem where RMT websites are just spamming keywords on Google, and if you want to have advertisements on your site so you don't have to charge people, you can't really avoid them. We have no affiliation with any of these websites. We would like to have them all blacklisted, but it does not work like that. They can get around that, and they buy up all the PoE keywords, and it's always going to happen. So if you see an ad that is RMT related, that is against terms of service, please click here and report this ad, confirm, and over time this is going to kind of like fade out. But until then, it is probably going to happen that some of these sites are just going to pop up here. Please help us with that. We can't really do anything about it. But yeah, overall, I hope I could give you a good overview, a little bit more of a dumbed down version. I will link the news post down below in the description if you want to check out what we made. Obviously, I'm also going to leave a link to the PoE section of Maxroll down below. Let me know what you guys think about this. I'm pretty hyped. I'm pretty proud. I think I speak for everybody on the team that we have put in quite a bit of sweat into this, and I hope you guys enjoyed as much as we do now. And yeah, see you.